It's strange, isn't it? How the greatest enemy we face is often the one staring back at us in the mirror. We talk about ambition, success, and progress as if they're external conquests, something to be hunted and captured in the wild world. But the truth is, the real battlefield lies within. Self-sabotage, that quiet, invisible act of destruction, is not always loud or obvious. It often wears the mask of caution, comfort, or self-protection. It whispers, "You're not ready yet. What if you fail?" Or, "You don't deserve it anyway." And before we know it, we've delayed, we've doubted, we've destroyed our own chances. The psychology of self-sabotage is not about foolishness, it's about fear. It's about the subconscious mind protecting us from imagined pain, even at the cost of real progress. Somewhere deep inside, we are wired to avoid danger. And for the brain, emotional rejection or failure registers as danger. So when we get close to success, a new job, a relationship, a big opportunity, the mind panics. What if I mess this up? What if I'm exposed as not good enough? And in that moment, we pull back. We procrastinate. We lash out. We quit before we can fail, not realizing that quitting is the failure we feared. It's a paradox that defines the human struggle. We crave success, yet we fear the pain that may come with it. We long for happiness, yet we cling to our suffering because it's familiar, because it feels safe. This is the hidden psychology of self-sabotage, the comfort of the known over the uncertainty of the possible. Most people don't realize how early it begins. Self-sabotage is often born in childhood, in those tiny, formative moments when we learned what it means to be loved, accepted, or punished. A child who grows up hearing that they're lazy, stupid, or not good enough internalizes those words as truth, even if they later achieve brilliance. Deep in the subconscious, that child still whispers, "I don't deserve success," and so they unconsciously recreate conditions that confirm that belief. They choose partners who don't respect them, jobs that undervalue them, or habits that destroy them. This is not self-hatred, it's self-loyalty to an old identity. The mind prefers consistency to chaos, even if that consistency is painful. If your identity has always been tied to struggle, your subconscious will pull you back into struggle the moment life gets easy. That's why some people sabotage happiness, not because they want to, but because deep down, ease feels unsafe. They're not used to peace. They're used to pain. And so they confuse peace with emptiness, success with danger, and love with loss. They build walls where they should build bridges, and they walk away from the light because it blinds them after so long in the dark. This is where the psychology of self-sabotage becomes tragic yet deeply human. We are creatures of habit, not just in action, but in emotion. We become addicted to the feelings that define us, even if they hurt. For someone who grew up feeling powerless, control becomes the drug. For someone who felt invisible, drama becomes the spotlight. So when life offers calm, their mind feels anxious. They create chaos because chaos feels like home. They might procrastinate before a big opportunity because the anxiety of what if I fail is more familiar than the uncertainty of success. They might pick fights in relationships because love feels threatening while conflict feels comfortable. In every act of self-sabotage, there's a hidden logic, the need to stay emotionally safe even at the cost of happiness. We think self-sabotage is irrational, but to the subconscious, it's perfectly rational. It's the mind saying, "I know how to survive disappointment, but I don't know how to survive joy." And then there's the perfectionist, the silent self-saboteur who hides fear behind high standards. Perfectionism is often praised as a virtue, but underneath it lies terror. The terror of being seen as flawed, of being judged, of not being enough. So the perfectionist delays projects, overthinks decisions, polishes endlessly, and ends up paralyzed. If I can't do it perfectly, I won't do it at all, they tell themselves, not realizing that perfectionism is just procrastination wearing a mask. It's fear of failure disguised as excellence. The perfectionist lives in an illusion, believing that if they control everything, they can avoid pain. But in trying to control everything, they lose the very freedom that success requires, the freedom to try, fail, and learn. Self-sabotage thrives in that fear, in the avoidance of vulnerability. Because success demands exposure. It demands that you be seen. And to someone who fears rejection, being seen feels like danger. So they stay small, invisible, or almost ready forever. There's another layer to this: guilt. The guilt of success, Many people carry an unconscious loyalty to their past, to their family, to their struggles. If they rise too high, they feel like they're betraying where they came from. Who am I to be happy when my parents suffered? Who am I to succeed when others have failed? This is the hidden emotional contract many people live under. Never outshine, never rise too far, never be too happy. They think they're being humble, but it's self-punishment in disguise. True humility is not dimming your light, it's using your light to help others see. But the self-sabotager believes that shining will invite pain, jealousy, isolation, rejection, so they dim themselves preemptively. They shrink their dreams, lower their standards, and pretend they don't care. But deep down, they do care. They always have. That's why it hurts. Then there's imposter syndrome, the psychological twin of self-sabotage. It whispers, "You don't belong here," even after you've earned your place. It's the voice of doubt that questions every achievement, dismisses every compliment, and attributes success to luck. Imposter syndrome and self-sabotage feed each other. One says, "You're not good enough," and the other says, "Then why bother trying?" It's a cycle that traps even the most talented people. They stop applying for promotions, delay creative projects, or reject love because they believe they're frauds who will eventually be found out. But what's fascinating is that imposter syndrome usually strikes people who are actually competent, people who care about doing things well. The incompetent rarely doubt themselves. The self-aware do. That's the irony. The more introspective you are, the more you see your flaws, and the more you question your worth. But that humility, if not managed, becomes self-sabotage. It's one thing to know your limits. It's another to build a cage around them. At its core, self-sabotage is a conflict between the conscious and subconscious mind. Consciously, we want success, the promotion, the relationship, the peace. But subconsciously, we associate those things with danger. Success means more responsibility. Love means possible heartbreak. Change means losing control. So the subconscious wins, because it controls 95% of our behavior. That's why willpower alone can't fix self-sabotage. You can't outthink a fear you haven't understood. Awareness is the first step, but reprogramming requires compassion. You can't shame yourself out of self-sabotage. You have to listen to it. Ask yourself, what is this behavior protecting me from? Maybe procrastination protects you from judgment. Maybe overeating protects you from loneliness. Maybe staying in toxic relationships protects you from the fear of being alone. Every self-destructive act once had a purpose. It was your mind's way of surviving. The problem is that what once protected you is now imprisoning you. Healing begins when you stop fighting yourself and start understanding yourself. When you realize that your self-sabotage is not a sign of weakness, but of pain. When you see that your fear of success is really a fear of loss, the loss of who you were, the loss of control, the loss of certainty. Growth always involves grief, because to become someone new, you must let go of who you were, and that's terrifying. No wonder we resist it. But if we can face that fear, if we can sit with the discomfort instead of escaping it, we can begin to rewrite the story. We can start replacing "I'm not good enough" with "I'm learning." We can replace "I always fail" with "I'm growing stronger." The words we repeat to ourselves become the beliefs that shape our lives. Self-sabotage begins in thought, but it ends in awareness. Think of the moments you've talked yourself out of something great. Maybe you were about to apply for your dream job, but you said, "I'm not qualified." Maybe someone loved you deeply, but you pushed them away because you feared they'd leave anyway. Maybe you started a project and abandoned it halfway, saying, "It's not the right time." Every time you did that, it wasn't laziness or lack of willpower. It was fear disguised as logic. The brain will always find reasonable excuses to avoid risk. But logic without courage is just fear in disguise. And so we live half-lived lives, busy, anxious, and unfulfilled, because we never confront the real question, what are we so afraid of? Is it failure? Or is it the responsibility that comes with success? Because success changes things. It asks us to grow, to show up, to maintain. It removes the comfort of excuses. It forces us to see how powerful we truly are. And that can be even scarier than weakness. The truth is, we sabotage ourselves not because we hate ourselves, but because we're scared to outgrow our pain. Pain is familiar. Healing is not. Failure is predictable. Success is not. But growth requires stepping into the unknown, trusting that you can handle whatever comes. The irony is that when we stop trying to control the outcome and start trusting the process, self-sabotage loses its power. When we learn that mistakes don't define us, failure doesn't destroy us, and success doesn't isolate us, we free ourselves from the old programming. We realize that the cage was never locked. We just forgot we had the key. So the next time you catch yourself procrastinating, avoiding, or overthinking, pause. Don't attack yourself. Ask, what fear am I protecting myself from right now? Bring it to light. Because once fear is seen, it loses its grip. The moment you name your self-sabotage, you reclaim control. The moment you forgive yourself for it, you begin to heal. And when you heal, you no longer need to block your success. You become open to it. You learn to trust yourself again, to take small steps, to make peace with imperfection, to understand that success is not about being fearless, but about moving forward despite fear. In the end, the psychology of self-sabotage teaches us something profound, that every act of resistance hides a longing for safety, and every moment of growth requires courage to face the unknown. We are not broken for fearing success. We are human, but we owe it to ourselves to rise above the old programming, to choose courage over comfort, progress over protection, and self-compassion over self-doubt. Because the life we dream of isn't waiting on the world to change. It's waiting on us to stop standing in our own way.